What's up guys? Some new details just released today on President Joe Biden's revised Build Back Better agenda, and they're keeping a lot of us in the dark as to what's going on in order to not disrupt negotiations, which have been going on for quite some time. This is your stimulus package Build Back Better and stimulus check update. Now look at this article just coming out today from Business Insider. Biden wants to make sure billionaires pay at least a 20% income tax, including on their massive pandemic era stock gains. That is gonna throw a wrench in things. First up, let's talk about this billionaires tax. They're saying this could raise literally billions of dollars, tons of money to help out reduce the deficit, help provide additional funding, maybe even more stimulus provisions. Now, however, do you feel that it's fair to tax billionaires, to tax people just because they have success over time? Or do you think that they're using loopholes that it shouldn't be and they need to pay their fair share in taxes? This is going to be very interesting to see how this unfolds because unreleased gains, usually you don't pay into yourself. So what if they have losses? Are they going to compensate them for the losses? Or is it just a one-way street? Take a look. President Joe Biden introduced a new minimum tax on millionaires on Monday, part of an effort to ensure that the wealthy slice of Americans pay at least some tax on their growing fortunes. The plan would set up a 20% minimum tax rate on households worth up to $100 million or more. During the pandemic, America's billionaires added $1.7 trillion to the cumulative wealth, per left-leaning Americans for tax fairness. The proposals remedies the single biggest failings of the tax code. The massive accumulation of wealth regularly goes untaxed. Seth Hanlon, a senior fellow and tax expert at the left-leaning Center of American Progress, said via email, the proposal is carefully designed to ensure that it only affects the wealthy at 0.01% of people and does so in a way that is practical and administrable. Under the newly proposed tax code, the billionaire million income tax, members of America's 0.01% would have their income tax in a minimum of 20%. Notably, that income will include unrealized gains from assets like stocks and bonds. Wow, it's the latest attempt by the Biden administration to target some of the massive gains that the wealthiest Americans have accumulated to pay for Democrats' priorities and to cut down the deficit. But previous attempts to raise taxes have been thwarted by fellow Democrats. Now America's wealthy see most of their income come not from big paychecks, but from assets like stocks that grow in value over time. However, those assets are generally only taxed when they are sold. Those are called capital gains, and they're taxed at a far lower rate than traditional income. When the assets are not sold off, the value that they accumulated is called unrealized capital gains. But under the White House proposal, unrealized capital gains will be counted as part of income. Wow, so not only be taxed, but included as income tax. This means that the wealthiest Americans will be taxed at a minimum of 20% of their full income, standard taxable income plus unreleased income. If they're already paying that, they won't owe more. But those who are under this new proposal would owe more to the federal government. They would get 5 years to comply with the new tax rules. Some billionaires like Tesla CEO Elon Musk would pay a lot more taxes to the federal government. Musk's tax bill would amount to an extra $50 billion over 10 years, according to accumulations from Gabriel Zuckman. And he becomes the richest person in the world as Tesla's stock goes up. So he has a lot of value of Tesla in his portfolio. But when it goes down, he's no longer the richest person in the world. This would be a huge hit. Other Democrats in Congress have similar proposals. Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon unveiled a plan in late October to tax roughly 700 billionaires. He is a very creative congressman. He's actually one that came up with the Federal Unemployment Benefits PUA, PUC, and the $300 per week boost. That tax focuses solely on unrealized capital gains, taxing them at the usual gains at 23.8%. The nonpartisan Joint Committee on Taxation estimated that Wyden's tax would bring in $557 billion over $360 billion. Previously, the White House found that the 400 wealthiest families paid just about 8.2% in income taxes annually when unrealized gains are factored in, far lower than the average taxpayer. But it's unclear whether congressional Democrats will coalesce around the plan. Republicans are generally opposed to tax increases, and they are likely to view the Biden proposals as punitive. Late last year, there was a significant unease among rank-and-file Democrats over the Biden. Senator Joe Manchin, a Democrat from West Virginia, assaulted as divisive, and the proposal fell out of consideration soon after. His office didn't immediately respond to a request for comments. During negotiations of Biden's Build Back Better plan, Senator Kristen Sinema of Arizona torpedoed attempts to raise individual and corporate income tax rates. Her office didn't immediately respond to a request for comments. I think there are still a lot of unanswered questions there, like what about unrealized losses from millionaires? Could this lead to people worth, say, $1 million that want to start controlling some of their assets? Their unrealized gains? Could this lead to other things? Do you think that they should do this? Or do you think that could lead to things that could be bad? Now let's talk about Build Back Better. This Bloomberg article says Biden to sidestep Build Back Better proposals in his budget. It says that President Joe Biden will broadly endorse the climate, social safety net, and tax code changes the White House has pursued as part of his Build Back Better agenda in its budget proposal Monday, but it won't specify the costs or revenues in a bid to avoid disrupting congressional negotiations. Instead, the fiscal 2023 budget document will include a placeholder known as a deficit-neutral reserve fund, signaling Biden's commitment to sweeping policy changes without spelling out the costs and benefits. So if you want to see this go through, the good news is they're making progress on it. The bad news is that they haven't worked out any of the numbers because there have been discrepancy between conservative Democrats and progressive Democrats as to what the numbers should be. But they're progressing with placeholders where numbers would go. As a result, Biden's budget tables won't include the prices of proposals such as universal free preschool, an expanded child tax credit, and funding to combat climate change, and also won't assume deficit reductions from policies such as prescription drug reforms or tax increases on corporations and wealthy Americans. The document will simply treat the agenda, which Biden has pledged would be fully paid for, as being deficit neutral. That also means Biden's proposal would impact long-term projections within the budget, including what a White House official said was an anticipated $1 trillion in deficit reduction over the next decade. The deficit projection was first reported by the Associated Press. This article mentions a lot about Senator Joe Manchin and how they don't want to upset things between Joe Manchin and progressives. They just want to make sure that they can push through legislation. They're going to work out the numbers here later, but they're going to decide the provisions should be included. As I mentioned in previous videos, Democrats have come out and said, we've got to get something done. This is a midterm election year, and right now, Biden's approval rating is extremely low, which is not good for the fellow party members of Congress. So Democrats who are in full control could very likely be losing it unless they start getting things done here as it gets closer to elections. And one of those things that I mentioned is stimulus checks. There are a lot of new bills coming out. We'll see if that's one of the things that they do to try to convince voters to keep them in power. And I'll be sure to let you know as soon as it comes out. And as always, thank you so much for joining me if you made it this far. If you haven't already, don't forget, smash the like button down below. I appreciate it. Also, leave your comments and share this out. I will catch you in the next one.